Thank you very much, Paul. It's nice to be here. The title of the talk is Seeing Educational Data in the Digital Ocean. This is work partly from Kristen DeCerbo and John Behrens. And yeah, so here I am standing in John's shoes. And that's unfortunate for you guys because he's a great presenter. He's a very effective communicator. He always starts with the big picture, sucks you into the conversation with his passion, sense of humor, and his listening. He really will look at how you're responding to him, ask for your opinion, and you'll have this nice conversation. So there's an interplay here. And the conversation goes, it can be grand, he can deal with minutia and talk technical details, and it tends to float anywhere in between. He always uses language that's appropriate to the audience. So if he was standing before you here, he would be using a nice highfalutin vocabulary. If you're sitting with him at the bar later, he might be using other terms. And that's what we want to do in visualizations. Visualizations are dialogue. We heard Mark Day say yesterday story. We heard George Siemens say narrative. I'm saying they're dialogue. We can use these all synonymously. Because we're trying to find a vocabulary and grammar to describe and expand what we know using our amazing visual sense that can easily discriminate color, motion, shapes, and patterns in the natural world and ascribe these to digitized data. A good visualization should enable a conversation with the data. So just to define what we're even talking about, we like the definition of data that Tukey espoused. Data are records of experience. Data analysis is learning from those records of experience, and the goal is to go from that data to provide insight and to form decisions. So we think of human history in two phases. First was the phase where we instrumented students with different types of assessments. I mean, we still do this, but we would give them something to do, items on a task, and then we would send them home. They would work on that, and the instructor would grade it later and provide feedback. We call this the digital desert. Contrastingly, we can now generate data, generate lots of it. We can capture a lot of it on the fly, and we call this the digital ocean. We are now swimming in the sea of data collection. So in data collection and analysis, we then see a shift to these new types of data. In the olden days, we had something that looked like this, typical spreadsheet of student IDs with items and their responses. New types of data tend to look like this. We have a lot of log files with different types of features and attributes associated with actions. So in the item paradigm, problems were made by posing items as questions. We'd get those responses. We'd get the responses score them as being correct or not. And with enough of them, we could say, yes, we know how this student is responding to this bank of questions and infer their learning. With activity, in the activity paradigm, activities request the student to participate in some sort of action. And these activities have features that then can provide attributes like perhaps how persistent we think the student is. Activities then, aggregating all of these activities, provide multidimensional information about the student. So there are new forms of data now being captured in the wild. And these tend to occur in a little bit more natural environments. Yeah, we're still talking about working with these devices, but the devices themselves are much more portable. We can use them anywhere. The gestures and things that we use are much more natural. All the inputs to them, and what is displayed can be much more natural than what might be on a printed page. So if we think of activities then, if we think of putting education on a loop of where we start with an activity up at the top, we give that to the student, have them interact with it, we collect the data on that activity, and then we start doing some analysis on it. We look at patterns. Then we update the student profile and keep repeating the process. And this can occur at several different scales of granularity. Along the way, we can provide feedback to necessary parties, the student, the instructors, administrators, et cetera. So the new data that we're collecting and the volume of it, this, as we heard in today's keynote, this challenges our existing categories. Data is captured in more natural environments, and we are logging these more natural behaviors. But how do we, the question for visualization is how do we encapsulate a multitude of these complex behaviors into patterns that we can then interpret and act upon? So we can think about dissecting this workflow out a little bit. Again, we start with the world, and we have these records of experience that we can then analyze, interpret in different ways, and start communicating to different parties, and then eventually make decisions on that results in a final consequence. And visualization can occur at any of these steps in the waterfall. My question is, how natural are our visualizations? I remember this ad growing up. Is it real or is it Memorex? I'm sorry, is it live or is it Memorex? The idea being back in the cassette tape days that Memorex was making a high quality tape product that you couldn't discern. You wouldn't get the tape hiss and whatnot from the audio recording. I don't know if we're quite at the Memorex level yet in our visualizations. And part of this, I started thinking about this. My daughter's now 10, but 7 years ago when she was 3, not that I was exposing her to Homer Simpson, but I was giving her reading her a lot of books that, like any children's book, has a lot of drawings, really a lot of synthetic images, pictures of bunnies and whatever else. One day I went to the library and picked her up a book on how chocolate is made. And it just contained a lot of natural images. It walked through this whole process of showing farmers out in the field, picking the cocoa pods off the trees and opening them up, spilling the beans out, and putting them all through the factory process and eventually making chocolate. And what was amazing to me was how she really responded to it. She seemed to just intuitively get every step along that way. And it made me think that children's books themselves are, in a way, we think of them as very simple, but they might just be fairly abstract. So what are we really good at as humans? We're really good at face detection. And there are algorithms out there now and fun apps you can download to make you look fatter or older or sexier, meaner, any type of thing. And if we think about how we are responsive to faces, I think it's because we are really sensitive to cues in dialogue, that we really respond to and want to have these conversations. We also tend to see patterns everywhere. Here's the piece of toast that sold for $28,000 that revealed the Virgin Mary in the toast. Digital data is not natural. We have a hard time understanding and interpreting images such as this. But that's not to say nature is easy. Patterns in nature can also be hard to spot. And if you want, you could get trained and make a fair amount of money becoming a chicken sexer, for example, learning to differentiate the wings of day-old chicks, if discriminating if they're male or female. And if you do so, I recommend this heavy-looking book. Be sure to get the second edition. It has a lot more information. So when we talk about visualization, we want something in between the simple thumbs-up gesture and the hairball. And something that capitalizes on, again, our amazing visual sense of discerning color, shapes, motion, and patterns, and engages in conversation. But let's start somewhere. Some of you may have seen this before. If we have a statistical distribution, so statistics are a nice way to inform ourselves about a data set. But if we have this table here where we imagine a 2D distribution of x and y, where the mean so try to imagine this in your head, paint a picture of the mean of x being 9, variance of x being 11, mean of y being 7.5, variance of y being 4 1/8, the correlation between those two data points being 0.816, and it follows a linear regression of 3 plus 1/2 x. So everybody have a picture of this in your mind? Does it look something like this? Good. Because you're absolutely correct. Does it look like that? Because that's also correct. And so is this distribution, and so is that set of data. So this little example highlights the importance of visualizing the data and probably needing to do so from a number of different perspectives. And so I'm kind of new to the learning analytics field. As I came on, was exposed to exploratory data analysis as espoused by Tukey, and I was kind of surprised that this wasn't just kind of common knowledge and a common practice. It seemed like, well, this is what you would normally do. But what Tukey did is really gave a checklist and a particular vocabulary to what we really should be practicing here in exploratory data analysis. And we heard yesterday as well that the difference between exploratory data analysis and explanatory data analysis. So exploratory is diving into that data set and seeing what it might have to tell you. Explanatory data analysis is when you know what you want to say, how to communicate it to other parties. So exploratory data analysis is great at seeing outliers, trends, and patterns, as we just saw in that simple example. But it might also require some training and orientation to various plots that we're making. So here I'm just showing a simple box plot. Many folks use this in statistics, but the first time you see this, you might not know how to interpret that graph, but you might just need some simple training to do so. So the objectives of EDA, exploratory data analysis, are to suggest hypotheses given observations, qualify what we think about those statistical inferences, and then guide further analyses and our data collection practices. So we're looking at informing decisions here, right? This is the goal of data science. There are 4 R's of exploratory data analysis. So this is what any visualization should try to or any set of practices should try to address. First is revelation. And as Tukey said, the greatest value of a picture is when it forces us to notice what we never expected to see. We heard yesterday the surprise factor. The residuals, data is a model plus the fit of the error. So as we saw in those 4 examples before, they all had the same error statistics, but we could obviously visually see a pattern in the errors that was different. So understanding it can really help us understand our model. as George Bach said, all models are wrong, some are useful. So just knowing where it's wrong, and but still where it is applicable is important. Re-expression is scaling and transforming the data in a variety of ways, so that it might be important to just see things on these different scales. And then resistance are the application of methods that are not easily affected by extreme or unusual data. So for example, taking the median of a distribution instead of the mean might be important if that distribution is skewed. And by doing that, you also, on the other side, on the flip side, you label your outliers. So that's an informative process. So just as a couple illustrations, here are some visualizations that we employed. We're looking here at student interaction data of students going through a course. This is a math course, and just the summative report of student interactions. On the x-axis is time, so when students interacted with the system. And then on the y-axis, these students are all going through a math book, and the y-axis denotes the chapters, and each row is an objective within that chapter. And a visualization like this has a lot of information in it, and it's immediately accessible. We see at a glance a lot of instructional design, implicit instructional design. Each chapter, when it is covered, tends to not be ever revisited again as they go through and advance to the next chapter. We can see that chapter 3 was completely skipped, as were the upper chapters. And as students work through a chapter, they get exposed and tend to work with the early objectives first, but the more difficult concepts they tend to not practice with as much. The marginal distributions on the bottom and the sides show then the overall activity, the summative activity, and so we can also label the objectives, how much they were covered or not on the right axis. And this serves as a template that we can look across a lot of different courses. Here, I call this the end of the semester cram. Basically, you see that in the last 2 weeks of the course, there are 3 chapters that are covered and a lot of review. The review is being shown along the right, the bottom right. Here's another visualization that we've made. A lot going on in this one. There's a chord diagram package called Circos, and it comes from it's used a lot in biology and genetics. But the idea being that if you start with some sort of informative axis around to build a circle, then you have edge relationships between nodes then within the circle. In this case, there's a lot of interactivity and scaling at different levels. So node number, the chapter node 2 there is selected, and it highlights the prerequisite and post-requisite relationships that it has to other parts of the book. And we can select, we could view everything at the chapter level if we wanted to, or select specific chapters and look at individual sections and objectives and see the different relationships between it. We can also color the nodes by different features and highlight or then filter out, say, less connected edges and things like that to bring out different features. So it could highlight, for example, those nodes that have a lot of prerequisites or post-requisite relationships. I forgot to mention then, similarly on the, like this type of plot, the color of the pixel here represents just the amount of interaction, but you could easily label this with correct response types of features, or different kinds of features that you might want to label. So what we try to do in exploratory data analysis is do like how John likes to start conversations, start big, and be able to explore and see things from a lot of different perspectives. And this then follows Schneiderman's mantra of overview first, zoom in filter, and then provide details on demand. So to summarize, welcome to the digital first world. The world has changed. Much of it is being recorded. Data is changing and taking on a myriad of forms, and the analytics also change. Visualization has always been a key part of data analytics and interpretation, and it will continue to do so. So as we move forward, let's be sure we are engaging in dialogue with the data. And with that, thanks.